They wrapped their dead in gold, sealed them in stone, and hid them from time itself. But something survived, something microscopic, something that was never meant to be read. Because when the bodies of ancient Egypt were finally opened, not by tomb raiders, not by priests, but by machines that can see the invisible, the story written inside those bodies did not match the story carved on the walls. Not the gods, not the bloodlines, not even the origin of who they were. And the most disturbing part, the DNA didn't stay silent. It revealed a connection to a land thousands of miles away, a place history tells us they could have never reached, a place that shouldn't exist. Welcome to FABELON Stories, where history, mysteries, and the untold secrets of our past come alive. For decades, scientists avoided studying mummy DNA. It wasn't because the question wasn't important. It was because it seemed impossible. Ancient Egyptian mummies are among the best preserved bodies in history, and yet they were considered genetic dead ends. Heat, humidity, bacteria, embalming, chemicals, all of it destroys DNA. Early attempts in the 1980s and 1990s mostly failed. Modern contamination ruined the results. Scientists concluded that the genetics of ancient Egyptians might never be known, and in that silence, myths grew. Everyone wanted Egypt to belong to them. Politicians, historians, storytellers, all telling their version of the story. But the dead remained silent until technology caught up. In the early 2010s, a team of geneticists made a bold choice. They didn't start with kings. They started with ordinary people, buried near the Nile at a site called Abusa El. These mummies lived between 1400 BCE and 400 CE. They covered the New Kingdom, the Ptolemaic period, and Roman Egypt. The scientists wanted to see the population, not just royalty. They wanted to understand how people lived, moved, married, and died in this great civilization. Using advanced DNA sequencing, clean rooms, and strict contamination controls, they did the impossible. They extracted fragments of authentic ancient DNA. For the first time, the mummies could speak. But first, it's important to understand what DNA can and cannot tell us. DNA does not reveal skin color, language, culture, religion, or intelligence. DNA shows ancestry, family relationships, and migration patterns. And even with these limits, the results were shocking. Ancient Egyptians were genetically closest to populations from the Near East Levantine and Anatolian groups. They were less similar to modern sub-Saharan Africans than you might expect. This surprised many people. But Egypt was never isolated. The Nile was not a wall. It was a trade, travel, and conquest moved people across its banks. Mesopotamia, the Levant, Nubia, and the Mediterranean all connected to Egypt. The civilization was a melting pot, long before globalization became a word. Some tried to twist this into a headline. Ancient Egyptians weren't African. Others claimed the DNA was fake. Both are wrong. Egypt is in Africa. Its geography, climate, and rivers shaped its people and culture. DNA shows that ancient Egyptians were connected to the Near East through migration. Over centuries, populations mixed, and the genetic story shifted naturally. Modern Egyptians are different from their ancestors. Arab expansion, trans-Saharan trade, Ottoman rule, and Islamic empires added new populations. Over 2,000 years, the genetic picture changed, but the story of ancient Egyptians is still there, in their bones. What about the pharaohs? That's the question everyone asks. Royal mummies are harder to study. Preservation chemicals interfere, and contamination is high. Political sensitivity is another challenge. Still, evidence suggests pharaohs were not genetically different from the general population. Tutankhamun, for example, was not an outsider or a divine anomaly. He was human, young, and fragile. His bones show malaria, bone deformities, and immune weakness. He carried the weight of a dynasty, just as any young ruler would. DNA also revealed diseases. Malaria, tuberculosis, and genetic disorders affected men, women, and children. Ancient Egyptians were brilliant, but they were also human. They suffered, they died. And embalming, ironically, almost destroyed their DNA. Resins and natron preserved bodies, but degraded nucleotides. Time and chemicals threatened to erase the evidence forever, yet fragments survived, whispering secrets that scientists could finally hear. Perhaps the most emotional stories come from children. Child mummies, sometimes no more than 5 years old, were buried with toys, charms, and small items. no crowns, no inscriptions, just a quiet life, now long gone. Yet DNA preserved the memory of their family, ancestry, and place in history. Science gave them a voice again. DNA teaches more than ancestry. It teaches connection. Ancient Egypt thrived not because it was isolated, but because it was open. The Nile allowed ideas, trade, and people to flow. Knowledge and culture moved alongside DNA. Civilization was built through interaction, not isolation. This is why the story is so human. Ancient Egyptians were not mythical figures. They were humans, just like us. Their lives remind us that history is messy, complex, and interconnected. The past is never simple. The DNA also shows us that civilization is not about purity or isolation. It is about connection. It is about what people build together. The Nile civilizations were successful because of exchange, migration, and collaboration. This is true for all societies, ancient or modern. The mummies preserved more than Buddha. They preserved truth. 3,000 years of silence finally gave us a message. There are no lost super races, no divine bloodlines, no magical outsiders. There are humans, brilliant and fragile, trying to survive and connect. Civilization is not about where you are from. It is about what you build together. The DNA of Egyptian mummies tell a story that is still alive. It shows movement, adaptation, and connection. It shows that history belongs to all of us, because it was created by all of us. And that is the voice of the past, speaking to the present. Not myths, not legends, not curses, just humans, preserved for thousands of years, finally telling their story. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the untold secrets we uncover. Share your thoughts in the comment side. Love to hear what fascinates you most about history.